Hey, buddy, ready to talk about Star Wars Unlimited again? Actually, I think we should finally talk about the Bleach card game. Oh, come on, no one wants to hear about that. Let's talk about the Kryptonite boxes. Everyone wants to know. I said we're talking about Bleach today. Okay, okay. Hey there, kids, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, we are going to sit back, relax, and finally get around to talking about the Bleach trading card game. That's right, I've been wanting to do this one for a while, and there's a good reason for that. You see, I have been an on-off fan of Bleach basically since it began. I thought it was a pretty solid series at first, and then I thought it was a pretty awful series, and then I thought it was a pretty great series, and then I thought it was a pretty awful series. It's been on and off for a long time. You see, way back in the day, anime was a relatively niche thing in America. You had shows like Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Gundam, and yeah, it was kind of a niche thing. Not a lot of it was out and about. At least it wasn't a very popular thing. You know, but Dragon Ball Z especially really did change that for a lot of people my age in the late 90s, early 2000s. We really got attached to this shonen battle anime. And when Dragon Ball Z had run its course, moved on to GT, and after everyone was, you know, we had played all the games, watched all the movies, especially the Broly movie. That one's awesome. You know, once Dragon Ball Z had run its course, its void was filled by 3 new anime that had hit the scene, not exactly the same time, but similar time frame in the early 2000s. It was One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, which were all shonen anime. They were all fairly popular back in the day, and all 3 of them actually had kind of a little bit of a rivalry between them. I thought, for instance, I thought Naruto and Bleach were pretty okay, and I always thought One Piece was kind of dorky back then. Fast forward a few years, I thought One Piece and Naruto were okay, and Bleach was bad, and then I thought Bleach and One Piece were good, and Naruto was awful. I have a really love-hate relationship with these 3 series. But throughout it all, you know, these anime, sorry, we'll get to the game part. These anime did prove popular enough to get games. That's where I'm going with that line of thought there. Not just video games, but yeah, card games. Naruto got a card game, and we will talk about that one at some point. One Piece got a card game, and we will talk about that at some point. And no, it's probably not the one you're thinking of. And yeah, Bleach got a card game. Bleach got a card game really early on in the mid-2000s. It was produced by Score Entertainment. And let me tell you, when I first heard about this, I remember thinking that Score was, for some reason, a sports cards company. I used to think that they produced sports cards and only sports cards. But I guess I was wrong, because not only did they produce the Bleach card game, they also produced Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha, 2 different Dragon Ball card games back in the day. Yeah, they were like the Bandai Namco of their era, with a bunch of anime-based card games under their belt, and the Bleach card game was one of them. It released in 2007, I want to say. Please don't quote me on that. I'm always bad when it comes to dates, especially longer than like 5 years ago. You know, ask me when like Evolving Skies came out. I have no idea. Bleach is a pretty interesting card game. Yes, it's a licensed card game based off of an anime, which is itself based off a manga, based on the insane mind that is Kubo. But, you know, there was plenty of material there, even in... That's a very loud motorcycle. Even in the early years of the franchise, there was a lot of material to work with when it came to producing a card game. So it seemed like a done deal. It seemed like such an easy thing, and the guys over at Score clearly agreed, because once they got a hold of the license, they got to work, and they put out a card game that's fairly interesting even to this day. And I'm going to do my best to lay out the rules for you guys keep in mind it has been a while since I've played this game, so if I get something wrong or if I have forgotten a detail, do not feel afraid to go in the comments and let me know how foolish I am and how forgetful I am as an uncle. Helps the algorithm. So, the first two things you need to know about this card game is that it relies on a 2-deck system and a Guardian card. The Guardian card is an awful lot like the hero cards from Flesh and Blood, in that it is your representative in the card game. This character is who you're playing as, or who's protecting your soul. It's a bit complicated. Then there is the 2-deck system. There's a main deck, which consists of 60 cards, and a side deck, which consists of 20 energy cards, in a mix of mind, body, and spirit energy cards, I believe. And it's not a mix that you get to choose. You see your Guardian card, in addition to determining the power value, your life total, that's your power value that the Guardian card determines. The Guardian also determines what combination of mind, body, and spirit energy you get to use in your side deck. You have to have that exact number of mind, body, and spirit cards in order for it to be a legal deck. Of course, the Guardian itself can have an effect to help you throughout the game, but most of the time the Guardian was not part of the action. The action was in other cards. There are 4 main kinds of cards. There's characters, events, items, and battlegrounds. Remember those energy cards from the side deck? Well, you used those to pay for playing these other 4 card types, kind of like the Magic Stones from the Force of Will card game. Character cards were, of course, the various people, characters, etc. from the anime Ichigo, Chad, Orihime, they're all here, as well as various Hollows. Hollows got their own cards, too. Character cards had a cost, 3 stats, and a boost number. As well as, of course, some had effects that you could use throughout the gameplay. But the stats are the important part of the card. You used those to attack at your opponent, and notably, those 3 stats weren't the only ones in the game. You see, there are 6 stats total in the game, and a character card could have any combination of 3 different stats from the 6 to choose from. Then there were event and item cards. Yeah, event and item cards, which functioned basically, they're like, events are like instants from Magic the Gathering, and items are like equipment from Magic the Gathering. Event cards had a variety of different effects that could be played on your turn or your opponent's turn, if I'm recalling correctly. And item cards provided a permanent benefit to the character they were attached to, whether it was a buff, an additional effect, etc. The final card type, which I almost forgot to talk about, is the battlefield cards, which function an awful lot like Yu-Gi-Oh's field spell cards, where they provide a permanent effect of some sort once they're in play. Although, unlike Yu-Gi-Oh's field spells, you can have more than one in play. In fact, you can have as many as you can afford to play. Fun stuff. Finally, let's talk about the goal of the game. Well, the goal is simple. You have a power score and your opponent has a power score. You'll win the game by reducing theirs all the way to 0. And this was done by attacking at the opponent's Guardian with your character cards in the hope of wiping them all out. All of your opponent's character cards and their Guardian, that is. Bleach's core gameplay loop is actually fairly easy to follow. You see, there's only 3 phases in a turn. There's the resource step, the main step, and then the end step. The resource step, however, is the one that I think sets Bleach most apart from other card games, especially other resource-based card games. You see, in the resource step, yes, you start your turn out and you untap all of your depleted cards, like in games like Magic the Gathering or Force of Will. And then you draw a card. And then you have a choice. You could choose to either draw another card or play an energy card from your side deck. And after you've made that choice, you do it again. You do it one more time, which really, in my opinion, is what sets Bleach apart, like, from so many other card games that were out at the time. Because this choice, it seems so simple, but it really can make a huge difference in a resource-driven card game. Do you choose to draw 3 cards? Or do you choose to draw 2 cards and get an energy card? Or you choose to draw 1 card and get 2 energies? There's a lot that can go into that decision, and a lot of different kinds of play patterns that can result based on your choices. And I just think that it can allow for, I think that this resource system allows for really potentially explosive early turns, as well as good recovery turns later on in the game. You know, drawing 3 cards could be the difference between winning and losing, especially if you've just lost some character cards, right? It's hard to articulate how impactful I think this particular system is. And I don't necessarily think it's the best one. I don't think this is the best way to do a resource game like this. But I think it's interesting enough that if a more skilled person than I should really sit down and evaluate Bleach's resource step at some point, and try to figure out if this is a good way to move other card games, like design other card games, because I think it's just really cool. Now, after the resource step is the main step, where you play cards, activate various card effects, such as your Guardian's effect, if they have one, or attack your opponent with your character cards. Now, remember those stats from earlier, this is where they come into play. To attack an opponent, not only do you tap one of your characters to declare the attack, but you declare which of their stats you're attacking the opponent with. This is really important because, again, not every character is going to have the same 3 combination of stats. Why this matters is because your opponent can only block your attack with a character who has the declared stat. That's really cool, in my opinion. You can only block with characters that share stats, and yeah, you have to tap your character to block an attacker. After blocks are declared, players let various effects resolve. They play event cards if they have them to play, or they choose to boost the stats. I think I've mentioned before, but there is a boost number on some of the cards, on most of the cards, I believe. And these boost numbers, by discarding cards with a boost on it, you boost the stat that the boost card says it boosts. I said that weird, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. In the top corner of cards, there is a boost number with a stat that it boosts. Ideally, you want to spend that boost on the stat you're attacking with or defending with. It's such a simple rule, but I feel like I just absolutely murdered the explanation there. Now, if your attacking character is better than the defending character in terms of stats, then congratulations, you win the fight. The defender is destroyed, and the difference in stats from your attacker to the defender is deducted from the Guardian's power score. And again, once that hits 0, you win the game. Of course, beating your opponent in these battles isn't the only outcome. There could be you could be defeated by them, in which case you lose your character, or there could even be a tie, in which case both characters are destroyed, which is kind of crazy. Now, once you're out of cards to play and attacks to make, then you end your turn. That's the end step of the turn. And it's your opponent's turn. And you guys just repeat those 3 phases over and over until one of you guys manages to knock out the other one. It's a simple gameplay loop, and I think it works fine. Now, let's talk about the game itself for a bit. Bleach ran from 2007 to, I want to say 2008. It was about a year. It had 6 sets total, that I do remember. Unfortunately, it was not an insanely popular card game. In fact, it wasn't popular enough to survive the 2008 recession, which was, if I recall correctly, the reason given for shelving the game at the time. They were planning a 7th set, but it looks like just the 2008 financial crisis really drove attention away from this card game, which led to Score justifying canceling it. And that's a shame, because I do think there is some neat stuff in this card game. Sure, this is a licensed card game. It is very lazy in the art department. You guys know how I feel about any card game that just takes screenshots from the anime to use as the card art. Not a fan. But I do think the core gameplay is very solid. Not the most intuitive. I do think it's a bit confusing in certain aspects, especially with regards to the stats. I think 3 stats total would have just been fine. But they wanted 6, and I understand. But besides that, you know, this game kind of reminds me a lot of like Force of Will. There's a side deck you play your resource cards from. You're led with a Guardian, like in certain Force of Will formats. And, you know, there's a lot of mind games you can play with this game too, you know. Trying to outwit your opponent in terms of what characters you have and what stats you have access to. Because, if your opponent doesn't have access to the stat you're attacking with, they can't block your attack. And I think trying to weed out your opponent's characters that can block your later stats in the game, you know, maybe sacrifice a character just to get rid of the only character on their side that has a particular stat. I think that's a valuable play, and it leads to some high IQ gameplay, in my opinion. More importantly, you know, while I like the game itself for what it is, just for its gameplay alone, I do like that. But more importantly, this game does have some genuine collectability, and I mean that in a very sincere way. You see, starting with the Bankai expansion, which was 3rd or 4th, I don't remember. The Bankai expansion introduced an interesting new kind of collectible card. You see, Score started inserting these, I believe, serialized autograph cards, where the voice actors of the characters would sign their respective cards, and you could find these in so many packs. They were exceedingly rare back then. I didn't know anyone at the time who pulled one, so they were very rare. In fact, they're rare even today. They're quite collectible. They have quite the price tag, even now, 15 years later at least, after the end of the game. So I do believe that there is some genuine collectability to be found in this game, especially if you're a fan of Bleach. Yeah, the game is good for what it is as a game, but if you're a Bleach fan, then there's even more to it than just the gameplay itself. There's a nice little bit of Bleach history to collect here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to a close. I have been here for a while now tonight. I keep having to turn off the recording because there are some really loud cars going past. In fact, I can hear another one zipping down the road now. But I just want to say, you know, I did genuinely enjoy this game when it was still in production. In fact, it's been I think it's been 15 years at the very least since I last played this game, but I remember enjoying it more than Score's other card games at the time, which included the Dragon Ball Z TCGs. Yeah. You know, Score did make 2 Dragon Ball TCGs, if I recall correctly. And I could talk about those at some point, but I do recall genuinely liking the Bleach card game for what it was more than Dragon Ball, which is pretty impressive, I think, because at the time I would have just been an idiot playing whatever card game for the sake of it. But yeah, I do like Bleach quite a lot. If I were to give it a score out of 10, I would give Bleach a solid 8. It has some good core gameplay. It's got some genuine collectability. If you're a fan of the anime, then there's a lot of stuff here that you'd just like to have in a personal collection. Overall, I like it. I'd recommend it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if you have given this game a try and whether or not you like it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.